Here are 10 non-spoiler facts about our favorite books in Elan. Along with Persephone, Wraith, and Nephron, the Galantians were supposed to be a much larger part of the Legends of the First Empire series. The group of warriors seemed like ideal fantasy characters, but after early drafts, their screen time was cut in favor of other characters with more depth. This does mean the Galantians have a much broader backstory than we see in the books though. If you want to learn more about that, we do cover some of that backstory in our Galantian video. The idea for the third Riyria Chronicles book, Death of Dulgath, stemmed from the 2012 film Jack Reacher. Sullivan was watching the Tom Cruise film, and he wanted to write a book that started fast and kept going. While many things changed throughout the writing process of Death of Dulgath, that high pace of action stayed with the book. Which leads us into number 3. Death of Dulgath was written fast, like really fast, in only 68 days to be specific. This was due to publication constraints stemming from the Legends of the First Empire series contract. With Age of Myth set to be published in the future with Del Rey, Sullivan could only publish another book set in Elan if it was done and published by the end of the current year, which as we now know, Michael and Robin were able to make happen. Some people may not realize it, but the paper in books is not all created equal, and publishers can use this to their advantage. For example, certain genres and classes of readers will often expect books to be a certain length. Fantasy and sci-fi books are often much longer, while for mystery and self-help books, readers expect those to be shorter. This is usually done through word count, but when that isn't enough, the page thickness can be used. Got a short fantasy book? Thicken it up. Got a self-help book with too much help? Thin pages. Another use for this is to make books in a series more uniform. Which is why, when we look at Orbit's print of Riyria Revelations, the first book, Theft of Swords, looks to be the thickest and longest of the three. But in all actuality, it is the shortest, coming in at only 691 pages, while Rise of Empire and Heir of Navron come in at 799 and 943 pages respectively. When Sullivan was 14, he wrote a short story titled The Plains People, starting a tradition of him illustrating his own covers. I would say this fact is about how Sullivan started writing young, but it's really mainly so I can show this sweet cover. Speaking of cover illustrations, in the original publishing of Riyria Revelations in their 6-book format, Sullivan actually created the cover art, including Crown Conspiracy showing Essendon Castle, Avampartha obviously showing the Tower of Avampartha, Nephron Rising showing Arista at the ruins of Amberton Lee, the Emerald Storm showing the same name ship, Wintertide showing Aquesta in the winter, and finally Persepliquis showing the ruins of Persepliquis. The final cover-related fact we'll do deals with the most upcoming book set in Elan. Esarhaddon is set to be published in 2023, but you may have already seen its cover. In fact, the cover art has been around for quite some time. Mark Simonetti, who has illustrated many covers for the Elan books, put out a book titled Coverama. Coverama is full of Simonetti's artwork, and one of the items that Sullivan commissioned for it was the cover art for Esarhaddon. And considering Coverama was first published in 2014, the Esarhaddon cover has been public for almost a decade before Esarhaddon's release. While we already talked about the Galantians' changing role in the Legends of the First Empire series, the series as a whole went through some drastic changes prior to publication. In early planning, it was supposed to be a trilogy, with each book focusing, and therefore being named after, the 3 main races, Rune, Durg, and Frey. It quickly grew to add in a 4th book, Rist, but then again shrunk back to 3, getting rid of Durg. These 3 books would end at the same place Age of War now ends, with the Battle of Granford. But realizing that the story of the war should be completed, Sullivan decided to write a 4th book to close out the series, which would be named Pyre. These 4 books did not do the story justice, and so Pyre was extended into a 5th book, and finally another 6th book, which landed the series at its final 6-book structure. The books were also renamed into the Age of format that we know today. Though interestingly, the beta books for the 1st book in the series went out before this rename, so there are still some lucky readers with the rune-titled book. When Sullivan first hit #1 on Amazon's best-selling sci-fi or fantasy books list, it was not a Riyria or Legends book. Instead, it was the short story about Mina and Suri, Pile of Bones. And finally, Sullivan is a hybrid author, meaning he has been published by traditional publishers as well as used self-publishing. The breakdown of that includes: the first run of The Crown Conspiracy was published by Aspirations Media. Sullivan then republished all 6 of the Riyria Revelations books through self-publishing. Orbit then republished Revelations in the 3-book format. Next, Orbit then published the first 2 Riyria Chronicles books, The Crown Tower and The Rose and the Thorn. The next 2 Chronicles books, Death of Dulgath and The Disappearance of Winter's Daughter, were self-published. The first 3 Legends of the First Empire series were published by Del Rey, with the next 3 being self-published. And now all 3 books in the Rise and Fall series are being self-published.
Thank you so much for watching today's video. Be sure to subscribe and watch my other videos to learn more about the world of Elan and Riyria. Thanks!